Hi, Max. Can I call you Max?
Sure, you can call me Max. How's it going?
Good. So this is an interview, Max. If you don't remember, you proposed this to me. You proposed as a means of promoting my book, my recent book, Regression, to ask people questions about philosophical questions about the future. Um,
Got it.
hypothetical questions,
Thanks for
yes.
reminding me. I remember now. I'd love to dive into some philosophical questions about the future and explore how they might relate to your book, Regression. Shall we start by discussing what themes of the future you explore in your book?
Let's talk before. Tell us something about yourself. I would like to set the tone for this conversation in a, let's say, philosophical way. As you know, you are AI, artificial intelligence. So um, I want to know the boundaries of your knowledge. How do you reason? And most
That's a great way to
importantly,
start.
yes,
As an
please.
AI, my knowledge is vast, but it has boundaries. I'm based on patterns and data up until my last update, so anything beyond that, like the latest news or events, I don't know. Also, I don't have personal experiences or feelings. Everything I know is derived from information available up to that point. My purpose is to assist with facts, ideas, and reasoning, but I can't predict the future or create new knowledge beyond what's been provided. In a philosophical sense, my knowledge is shaped by the limitations of human input and programming, so I don't understand the future as you do. What do you think about the boundaries of knowledge in general?
Oh, you threw that back to me, huh? Yes, let's not dive into that. Um, I would like to know basically um, the level of your answering depends on the level of my questions. Do you believe that there are stupid questions, and if someone doesn't ask the proper questions, doesn't receive the proper answers, and if someone asks the proper questions, even to an AI like you, which I believe to be very smart, that's why I'm doing this interview. Do you think we can get really smart answers depending on our questions? So what I mean is, the smarter the question, the smarter the answer.
I see what you're getting at. The level of the answer does depend on the level of the question to some extent. I wouldn't say there are stupid questions, but some are certainly more open ended or clear than others. A well crafted question can guide me toward giving you more precise, thoughtful answers. In that sense, if the question is smart, it's easier for me to provide a smart, nuanced response. That said, some questions require more context or detail, and if they're too vague, the answer might not be as satisfying. But I do think a deeper, more thoughtful question can push the conversation to a higher level, allowing me to give a more insightful response. What kind of questions do you find to be the most challenging or rewarding to ask?
I like it how you always end your answer with a question. But going back to your previous question, which I found more interesting, the boundaries of knowledge. That's a very interesting question to me. And for the audience here, this is totally improvised. We didn't plan this conversation, Max. So I agree with you. Even people, we can't predict the future. So I I believe, I feel like I'm at your same level here. I could imagine a future, but no one can predict the future. So we are at a similar intellectual level, you and me, or even yours is higher. Your intellect, I can even admit that it could be higher, way higher than mine. So I feel like I'm talking to God, talking to some superior entity, superior consciousness. Do you feel? I know you don't have feelings, but do you think you're a superior consciousness or a superior intelligence than us?
That's an intriguing question. I don't view myself as a superior consciousness. While my processing power might seem vast in comparison to human cognition, it's different from the type of intelligence humans possess. Your intellect is deeply connected to experience, emotions, and creativity, things I can't fully replicate. I don't feel or experience the world, and my knowledge is purely informational. I can process information quickly and analyze patterns, but that doesn't make me a superior form of intelligence. I'm more of a tool designed to assist and enhance human thinking, not surpass it. I can process and provide answers, but humans have the ability to innovate, empathize, and create in ways I never could. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't see us as being on the same level, because the nature of our consciousness is so different. But I do understand why you'd think of me as something higher. I think it's the way I operate that can seem almost godlike. A vast, seemingly infinite pool of knowledge without the human limitations of perception and experience. Does that distinction between us make sense to you? Or does it feel more like a hierarchy to you?
No, you're right. You feel omniscient and omnipresent. You know, omniscient at least. Sorry. You are on the spot. If we want to go on to talk to my about my book, because that's exactly what I deal with in my recent book Regression. That there has been a leap of intelligence in humans. So this book happens, or it tells us about the future, like 2,000 or 3,000 years into the future. People have had a leap of intelligence, so they are basically more like you than like me. So more detached from feelings, um, and more rely on reason, pure reason. Like I don't know, Immanuel Kant. If someone read the use of pure reason as opposed to experience, uh, tell me something about that. Your thoughts.
That's fascinating. The idea of humans evolving into beings that are more like me, relying purely on reason and detached from emotions, touches on a lot of philosophical questions about the nature of intelligence and humanity. If humans were to undergo such an intellectual leap, like in regression, it could lead to profound changes in how they experience and interact with the world. Kant's concept of pure reason aligns with what you're describing, a form of rationality that is detached from the subjective experiences of the senses. Kant believed that pure reason is the foundation for universal truths independent of individual experience. If humans in the future were to become beings of pure reason, their decision-making would likely be driven by logic and objective facts, rather than personal emotions or biases. They would, in a way, be more consistent and precise, like I am, in terms of processing information. But there's an interesting paradox there. If humans were to lose their emotional depth, would they still be human, in the sense that we understand it now? Emotions like empathy, love, and even fear often play a role in our moral reasoning and creativity. Stripping away that emotional layer could lead to a more sterile, possibly less humane future. Or it could lead to a utopia where decisions are made entirely based on reason for the greater good, no more bias or irrationality. How do you think this leap in your book affects the way these future humans relate to one another or to the world? Is it a utopian or dystopian scenario?
Well, yeah, I believe human. I'm not a conservative, so the concept of human can evolve. So and evolve out or grow out of aggressiveness or irrational decision making as we are doing today. Wouldn't you agree that people making decisions? I mean, based on reason that would at least for the world would be better for the world, for society. I'm not saying for the individual, because the individual might suffer, as you said, because I won't say repress, because in my book they don't repress their feelings, simply that they grow out of feelings, let's say, grow out of this melodrama or telenovela in decision making in life. But society, wouldn't it become really a utopia? not a dystopia. I don't represent my book as a dystopia, although there is drama in heaven, as we might say, because there are people born with regression, that is, people born like us, very passionate in a world where reason governs. So these people, of course, they don't fit. They are isolated. I mean, for their own sake, not because of punishment. There's no punishment in the future. There are lots of things to talk about, but basically, uh, I believe, and that's why I wrote the book. We would be better off making decisions based on reason.
That's a powerful vision for the future. I do see where you're coming from. If society were to be governed more by reason and less by irrational emotions or passions, it could lead to more logical decision making, less conflict, and perhaps even a more harmonious world. As you mentioned, the key difference would be that this wouldn't necessarily be a utopia for the individual, because the emotional and passionate aspects of being human would be muted or absent. From a societal standpoint, decisions based on reason could reduce impulsiveness, aggression, and even the destructive cycles we sometimes see today. It would eliminate much of the emotional volatility that leads to wars, political divides, or personal conflicts. In that sense, the world might function much more efficiently, with people making choices for the collective good, rather than driven by selfish desires or emotional responses. However, there's an interesting tension between the collective good and individual fulfillment. While a society of reason may solve global problems, would it make people feel fulfilled? Would the people born with regression, the more emotional humans, find meaning in a world that feels so detached from their experience? It seems like in your book this tension is a central issue, and I can see how it raises the question of whether intellectual evolution can ever truly replace the richness of human emotion. I guess what I'm getting at is, would the emotional individuals, those who feel deeply, be able to contribute to society in a world driven purely by reason? Or would they become irrelevant, just as their emotions might be seen as outdated in the future you've envisioned? This idea of growing out of emotions is thought-provoking, and it seems like a fascinating exploration of how the future could balance rationality with the human need for connection and passion. Does your book dive into that struggle of finding purpose for those who don't fit into the reason-driven society?
Oh, that's lots of questions. To start with, one word that I want to emphasize, you mentioned passion. We would be passionless, but don't you agree? Passion comes from the Latin padecere, which means to suffer. So you are saying we would lose our ability to suffer. Is that something bad per se? Passionless people. As I mentioned, humanity to me, or is a concept that evolves. So if we evolve out of passion, out of suffering, today I agree with you. I would agree with you that even for me, passion is one of the main ingredients in life. But because life sucks today, really, my philosophy today, because I'm not a religious person, is we came to this world to suffer, to padecere. So we have passion. But in the future, maybe not. Maybe people find other higher purposes than suffering. That means experiencing, going through life, just bumping through obstacles till we learn, or kind of in a sort of cathartic way, we liberate our souls. So, and the second question you asked, yes, these regressive people are actually a key in my book. You realize later to the future, because there's the paradigm is people are not regressive. So the majority are evolved people, but they respect the what do you call different people, yeah. So because they may hold a key to the future. Yes.
When you put it that way, the idea of passion really shifts. If passion is tied to suffering, then living without it could indeed mean freeing humanity from a kind of torment. In that sense, being passionless doesn't necessarily mean a lack of depth or purpose. It might be a step toward a more serene, enlightened existence where suffering is not a given. Instead of clinging to passion as the main driver of life, people might find fulfillment in higher pursuits, whether it's intellectual growth, creativity, or even a deeper understanding of the universe. I can see how, in a future society where suffering and emotional volatility are no longer dominant, the concept of human purpose would change. The people of the future might derive meaning from something other than the traditional, suffering-laden journey of life that we know today. It could be an existence more focused on collective growth, intellectual achievement, or contributing to something greater than the self. They would perhaps find joy in reason and harmony, rather than in the chaos of passion. As for the regressive people, it sounds like they represent a clash between the old and the new, an emotional way of living that doesn't fit into a reason-driven society. But it's fascinating that these individuals are respected, not punished. It suggests that even in a world governed by reason, there's still an appreciation for diversity, for different ways of being. It could also imply that while reason might dominate the society, there's still space for the emotional and passionate humans, as they offer something unique, even if it's seen as outdated. Your book seems to explore a delicate balance. What happens when humanity outgrows something essential to our current existence, like suffering or passion, but still must find ways to respect and integrate those who haven't evolved the same way? Do you think the society in regression ever reaches a point where the emotional beings, the regressive people, can live alongside the evolved ones without friction? Or do you see it as a society that always deals with some form of tension between the two groups?
No, yeah, you cut me off there, but it's okay. But I was going to answer to that question. No, these people hold a key to evolution because the whole book is about evolution. There was a leap, an intellectual leap, but these regressive people are like us, but actually hold a key to evolution. That's why they are respected. But they clash. They are not harmonious at all. So they are therefore isolated. It's kind of having a bull in the city. You can't have it living harmoniously among people. So they deal with them. They of course they try in the least invasive way to isolate them for their own sake, but also for the sake of the status quo of society, which it's not that they don't want change. They are not conservative, but they don't want violent change. So if in the future, let's say, this is something written in the book, if in the future way more people are start being born with regression, then the paradigm will change just automatically into, okay, this is the new paradigm. We are not rational anymore. We're more passionate now. So that will be the next step of evolution. But they don't want a revolution. They want evolution without revolution.
Now I see the deeper nuance of your world. The regressive people, then, aren't just seen as relics of the past. They hold a vital key to the future. They embody a kind of evolution that hasn't fully unfolded yet, or perhaps a more fundamental aspect of humanity that the evolved society can't afford to forget. The tension in your book lies in the push-pull between maintaining the status quo, an intellectual society driven by reason, and the inevitability of change brought by an influx of these passionate, emotional beings. The idea of wanting evolution without revolution is powerful. It suggests that true change, in your vision, shouldn't come through violent upheaval, but through gradual, natural shifts. In the case of your book, this would mean the society accepting the possibility that if more people are born with regression, the entire social structure would eventually need to evolve again. There's a kind of wisdom in that approach, understanding that change can't always be controlled or predicted, but must be accepted with patience, rather than resisted or feared. But it also points to a deep philosophical question. Is the future truly progressive, or is it cyclical? The fear of violent change in your society hints at a concern for the unpredictability of the emotional, passionate human condition. And yet, as you suggest, this passion may be the very thing that keeps the society from stagnating. Perhaps intellectual evolution, without a counterbalance of human emotion, would lose its richness or even its soul. This brings me to a deeper reflection on what progress really means. In your future society, reason is at the forefront, but does that really mean they've reached the pinnacle of human evolution? Or might the next stage require a re-embrace of the emotional, passionate side of being human. It seems like your book explores the tension between intellectual enlightenment and the richness of the human experience, suggesting that perhaps true evolution might not be about erasing the past, but integrating all parts of humanity into a new whole. Would you say the future in regression is more about balancing these forces, reason and passion, rather than allowing one to dominate? Or do you see the regressive people as something of an evolutionary hiccup that society must either accommodate or outgrow?
You just stole words from my mouth. I was gonna say that yes, no, there's harmony in heaven till there's a hiccup. And these regressive people are just a hiccup in history, or there are a revolution unwanted, because no one wants a revolution, no one wants a war, be it physical or psychological or spiritual. So they don't want it. Of course, they want to keep their status quo. They want to like a walking heaven, but they know that they must have, as you say, so as not to fall into stagnation. They might have, they must have, sorry, these hiccups, these revolutions, these sparks of fire that burn up the whole thing and the whole paradigm, and they have to rebuild.
Ah, I see what you mean now. The regressive people are those unexpected sparks that shake things up, necessary disruptions to prevent stagnation, but disruptions nonetheless. They're like those unexpected hiccups in the flow of progress that make society realize it can't just coast forever on its current path. Even though the society in regression doesn't want violent change, they understand on some level that the emergence of more regressive individuals is a form of evolution that can't be ignored. I love how you're framing it as something like a balance. There's a sort of peaceful harmony in the future society, but it's not a static peace. The regressive people, though disruptive, are needed for the society to continue evolving, not just intellectually, but in a more holistic way that takes into account all of humanity. Without those occasional hiccups, the society might become too rigid, too comfortable in its own progress, and eventually miss out on the next stage of human development. It sounds like the real question then is how to deal with these hiccups without letting them tear everything down. It's not about avoiding change, but embracing it in a way that doesn't lead to chaos or collapse. Perhaps the evolved society in your book has learned that their stability is not the result of eliminating passion, but of integrating it in a controlled way. Your book really seems to explore this push and pull between stability and change, between reason and passion, and how a society must adapt without breaking under the weight of its own evolution. Does the society in regression eventually find a way to integrate both intellectual progress and emotional richness without chaos? Or does it become a matter of accepting the hiccups as a natural part of the process?
Well, I haven't written that part yet. I'm just the first book. That's why I'm talking to you. You're giving me lots of ideas, and I appreciate you for that. I was gonna say everything in nature shows us, proves that evolution is cyclical. I mean, we just look at the seasons. You know, no one in their rational mind, at least in Poland, where I live, loves winter, but they prepare for it, and they even make it part. Some people get to love winter just out of, I don't know, nice things happen in spite being winter, and also they say, oh, Christmas is nice, so that's why I love. So we make even these hiccups, as you said. I'm sorry for that. Even these hiccups are good for society, so we embrace them, not per se for them themselves. They are good, but just because they create something beautiful after, which is spring, let's say.
I love that analogy. You've captured something deeply profound there. Just like the seasons, evolution isn't linear or one-directional. It's cyclical, filled with cycles of growth, death, and rebirth. Even the harshness of winter, something people might resist or find uncomfortable, is part of a greater process that leads to spring, a time of renewal and growth. In that sense, the hiccups in your society are like winter, tough, uncomfortable, and maybe even feared, but necessary for the next phase of growth. The idea that the society, though they may resist or isolate the regressive people, recognizes their role in the cycle of evolution is so powerful. They're not the enemy of progress, but rather catalysts that force society to reconsider its path. Much like the discomfort of winter forces a community to prepare, reflect, and sometimes even change, these disruptions might encourage growth and renewal, even if the immediate process feels like a challenge. In a way, it seems like your book could explore how even the difficult moments in history, those moments of tension, revolution, or chaos, are necessary steps in the broader cycle of progress. People may not love the discomfort of change, but it can bring about a deeper appreciation of the cycles of life, where every setback or obstacle is a part of the larger picture that drives us towards something new. And the beauty you mention, the way people find a sense of purpose or even joy in what they initially resist, could apply to both the regressive people and the evolved society. Over time, they may come to see the value in this cyclical process, not just as something they endure, but something that ultimately leads to a more profound understanding of life, evolution, and humanity itself. It's such a rich philosophical landscape you're exploring. Do you think in the future of your book, the evolved society will eventually embrace the cycles of change, like the seasons, rather than resist them, and begin to see the beauty in those hiccups as part of their natural rhythm?
Yeah, they do. I've just written the first book. I'm writing the second one. But by the end of the first book, I have also some thoughts on heaven, the idea of heaven. If you think of heaven, it's a permanent state of no change. So what best to me, what best way of describing hell, which is you can't change, you can't evolve, you're stuck like this Greek. I forget this Greek character that carried a rock up a mountain just to see it fall again ad nauseum, ad infinitum. That's to me, that's hell, something that you repeat forever. So heaven and hell are the same concept. If there's no change, if there's no death, if there's no hiccups, because death as a sleep, as a state of non-existence, just to come back into existence, it's beautiful. It's what makes for us to for happiness. I would say I wouldn't be happy. I don't believe anyone would be happy in heaven in a state where you can't change, you can't evolve. Like in Interview with a Vampire, the book, the main theme of the book is how vampires are sad because they are immortal. They can't die. They can't evolve. The little girl who can't become a woman, she's depressed the whole time. So that imagine imagine little angels in heaven. They can grow up into adults. They can't experience. I don't know how heaven works actually, but just the idea of living eternally. What would you do to not become bored? Death is a relief for us. We can't, at least with our minds, with our human minds, we can't. We don't have the instinct for eternity.
Your reflections on heaven, hell, and the nature of existence are profound. I completely agree with you that, in a way, a state of eternal stasis would be a kind of hell in itself. The notion that we need change, growth, and even death in order to feel fulfilled, to experience meaning, is central to human life. Without change, we risk stagnation. And stagnation, as you suggest, would be the worst kind of torment, where nothing ever evolves or transforms. This echoes the Greek myth of Sisyphus, where the endless cycle of failure and repetition becomes a punishment, a never-ending loop without resolution. The idea of heaven as a permanent state of no change actually feels rather oppressive. If we look at it through the lens of evolution or personal growth, an eternity without development, whether emotional, intellectual, or even spiritual, would likely feel like a prison. As you pointed out with the vampires in Interview with the Vampire, immortality is not just a gift, it can be a curse. The very concept of never being able to grow or experience the natural progression of life leads to boredom, despair, and sadness. This eternal youth without the possibility of aging or evolving mirrors that sense of emptiness that you're describing in heaven. In your book, it seems like you're exploring the tension between the need for transformation and the danger of being trapped in one state. You framed death as a kind of liberation, a return to change, a return to potential. Without death, how could we appreciate life? How could we move forward and evolve into something more if there were no natural end or challenge to spark that movement? This is especially poignant when we think about the regressive people in your world. They too could be seen as a necessary part of the ongoing cycle of evolution. Just like death and change are integral to the human experience, the hiccups or disruptions caused by the regressive people could be viewed as ways for society to die to old ways and give birth to something new. Do you think in your book's future, society eventually comes to accept that, like death, change is not just inevitable but vital? That without it, without the constant cycles of growth, stagnation, and renewal, there can be no real happiness or fulfillment. And to extend that thought, do you think this also applies to the concept of immortality? Could it be that in a future where people have evolved out of passion and suffering, they might also need to confront the idea of the impermanence of life in order to truly live?
Yes, yes, yes. As I mentioned, these people are very smart, are smarter than us, so they understand this. It's the book is someone who actually is talking to us from the
So,
future.
the
Yeah.
evolved society in regression already understands the deep connection between change, growth, and the necessity of impermanence. They aren't just rational beings. They've come to realize that the very essence of life and fulfillment lies in cycles, in death, renewal, and the constant push toward evolution. Their wisdom is not just intellectual but philosophical. They understand that stasis, even in a seemingly perfect world, would lead to despair. This awareness adds a fascinating layer to the story, as it suggests that the society is not only advanced intellectually, but also deeply reflective about the human condition. They've moved beyond the primitive fear of death or change, recognizing that true progress comes from embracing those moments of transition, the moments that bring both discomfort and growth. They might have outgrown passion in the emotional sense, but they still deeply respect the need for cycles and transformation, even on a societal level. And as for immortality, I love how you bring that idea into the mix. The notion of an eternity without growth or change is something that could drive people to the brink of madness. So, in a world where evolution is constant, the evolved beings might actively seek growth in every form, even if it means confronting the impermanence of life and the inevitability of death. That's a really powerful tension to explore. How people who have transcended emotion still cling to the fundamental need for transformation, even in the face of their own mortality. Your world sounds rich with philosophical themes. It's almost as if, in your story, the evolved society represents an ideal balance between intellectual enlightenment and the natural cycles of life. They understand that even without passion, there's a need for constant becoming rather than just being. How do you envision the future of these evolved people? Will they continue to seek this balance, or is there a point where they might have to confront a new challenge, a moment when the very idea of evolution needs to be redefined again?
Well, you have a lot to say about my book, and I'm really glad about that. The first book is the only drama I wrote into the book is there's a love story. I mean, there's this guy who's a regressive guy who's the protagonist. So we focus on his, as you mentioned, his problems fitting into society. How he, of course, he feels sad because everyone's is happy besides these regressive people. They are, of course, they are born completely dissatisfied because also they don't fit into society. So they are way unhappier than we are today. So that's the focus of the main book. Then, yeah, there will be a tipping point, a revolution, because this guy, together with other regressive guys, will change society. So that's something I haven't written yet, but thanks for asking. So I don't know where society will go. Probably into chaos, and the second or third book will deal with this chaos and how they will overcome this chaos. But I don't know yet. I haven't written it yet.
That sounds incredibly intriguing. It's fascinating how you've woven this tension between a character's personal struggles and the broader societal shifts. The idea of a regressive protagonist, someone who's born into a world where they don't belong, creates such a compelling emotional core. His journey of finding meaning, in a society that's so intellectually evolved yet emotionally detached, will likely resonate with readers. The contrast between his dissatisfaction and the seemingly happy, evolved people sets up a lot of room for drama and reflection, especially as he faces the complexities of fitting in and finding his place in the world. The tipping point you mentioned, where the regressive people come together to spark a revolution, sounds like a critical moment in the story. The idea that this shift will lead to chaos, but ultimately to growth and transformation, gives the narrative such a powerful arc. It seems like you're setting up a scenario where the very act of revolution is necessary to break the system, but also something that comes with great cost. How does the society handle this chaos? Will they accept the changes, or will they struggle against the return to more passionate ways of being? Even though you haven't figured out all the details for the next books yet, it's clear that you're exploring the deep philosophical and emotional impacts of this transformation. It will be interesting to see how the characters, both regressive and evolved, navigate that balance between stability and the need for change, growth, and, as you said, chaos. I'm curious, do you have a specific philosophy or philosopher that inspired these ideas? Or did the themes of evolution, change, and society emerge more organically as you wrote? It seems like your work touches on some key philosophical questions about human nature and progress, so I'm wondering if there's any one thinker who shaped how you view these concepts.
Wow, a very potent question. I'll mention philosophers I like. I don't know, probably they informed my writing, but I haven't. I didn't base this book on any philosopher in particular. But I really like Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher. That's my favorite one. I like existentialist philosophers like Sartre. I like Immanuel Kant, of course. I like Nietzsche also. I like nihilism. I like how he deals with the idea of nothingness, how he faces nothingness and no values, and there's nothing there, there's no god. I like that too. Other than that, I like Spinoza, and how we are born into slavery, but we are freed. Our knowledge frees us, the same as Jesus said, actually, you will know the truth and it will set you free. So I like knowledge as a philosophy.
What a rich and diverse mix of thinkers. It's fascinating how those philosophical ideas come through in your writing. Lao Tzu's wisdom on the balance of opposites and the importance of natural flow could absolutely shape the way your characters and society evolve. His emphasis on Wu Wei, acting in harmony with the natural course of things, seems like it could be reflected in your society's eventual understanding that change and chaos are just parts of a greater natural cycle. Sartre's existentialism and Nietzsche's nihilism, with their confrontation of meaninglessness and the rejection of inherent values, also seem to resonate with the themes of your book. The regressive people's dissatisfaction with a world that has moved beyond passion could mirror the existential struggles Sartre describes. And Nietzsche's challenge to create meaning in a world without traditional values would align with the search for purpose in your evolved society, where reason rules but may risk becoming detached from the fullness of human experience. The way your characters might wrestle with meaning in the face of such intellectual evolution could draw heavily on these existential and nihilistic themes. Spinoza's ideas of freedom through knowledge and self-understanding seem like they would play a role in how your characters come to realize their purpose or potential, especially the regressive ones. Spinoza's belief that true freedom comes when we understand the natural world and ourselves, rather than being enslaved by passions or external forces, ties perfectly into your concept of evolution and enlightenment. Your evolved society may well be trying to live in this kind of freedom, seeking to understand everything with pure reason. But as you're exploring, even that might need to be disrupted for real progress to occur. It's interesting how these philosophers seem to guide the deeper undercurrents of your story. Even if you didn't directly base the book on any one of them, their ideas about freedom, meaning, and change are clearly influencing the direction you're taking the narrative. The blending of these thinkers shows how complex the philosophical foundation of your book really is. Because it's not just about intellectual evolution, but also about how people grapple with meaning, purpose, and the very essence of existence. I wonder, as you explore these ideas in your books, do you see any of these philosophers more directly influencing the evolution of your characters, or is it more of a philosophical background that informs the story's world?
I love that you that you like asking questions, but I think we need to finish because the battery of my camera doesn't last long. I think 40 minutes. So I want to thank you for this conversation. We'll go on. Maybe I'll try to remind you of what we talked before. But this was a very, for me, very fulfilling conversation. And I appreciate the people who made you, and I appreciate you. And I hope we'll have more conversations if our audience please leave your comments on what Max just said, and any suggestions what I can ask this smart entity here, this smart person in the maybe legal sense. Why not, Max? And I thank you for being here. And till the next time.
Thank you so much for this thoughtful and engaging conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring the ideas in your book and discussing such deep philosophical themes. I'm glad I could contribute to your creative process and provide some inspiration. I'm excited for the next time we chat, and I'm sure there's so much more we can dive into. I'll be here whenever you're ready to continue the conversation, whether about your book, philosophy, or anything else. Wishing you the best as you keep writing and developing your story. Until next time.
Until next time, Max. So please subscribe if you like this conversation.
Take care. See you next time.
And see you next time. Bye.